has the ability to affect anything.
That's right. So she's not a computer nerd herself, so she appreciated that you never know where the problem is. Yeah.
And as Alex said, sometimes the thing to do is to tear everything down and say,
one thing at a time.
Does this work from here to here? Yes. Okay. Now let's insert this thing. Does it still work? Oh, it doesn't. Okay.
I call that input to output analysis. I taught people to do that when I trained.
The only thing that scares me about that is remember in the days when SCSI hard drives, if you could put one on and it'd work fine, but if you put another one on behind it and hit that one instead of the one in front of it, it would mess things up. So even as you were going, good.
Right.
Yeah.
But the point was that the second, it worked without the second hard drive. The second hard drive was the culprit. Even if you weren't trying to hit the data on that one, you might still be trying to hit the data on the first one.
Yeah, but if you put the second one in the first place, then suddenly it would be fine for months.
You
just had to put the second SCSI drive before the first
one. Let's do ourselves a favor and flush all of our knowledge of SCSI hard drives out the drain.
Exactly. It's completely useless knowledge at this point.
But I've got all these dip switches. I need to do
what am I going to do with
the
my zip drives?
Hey, there's Alex.
Hey, I made it.
Yeah, congratulations.
I would love to say that I had a great excuse. So it's really this meter is so much hotter than the one that we had in the other room.
You do sound loud here.
You are so much hotter than you were in the other room.
Why? Thank you. Next, hold on. We are glad that Ofan is so pleasant with us. His president,
Mickey's saying, make sure you have original sound before you do the check.
Still too hot. Okay, hold on. We are glad that Ofan is so pleasant with us. His present annual pains we thank you for. When we matched our rackets to these balls, we will in France, by God's grace, play a set shall strike his father's crown into the hazard. Tell him that he hath made a match with such a wrangler. Okay, sounds good. All right. Everybody
excellent. Well, good to have you here. So
it's a very technical problem that I had. I left the power supply for my Scorpio at the house. So I got here nice and early. We were relaxed. We were like, do, and then I was like, oh no.
Checklists.
No. It's worse than that. I picked up a power supply. I just picked up the wrong one.
Oh.
So I picked it up. I was like, why isn't this fitting? Because it had it was different sound devices. That's the worst part. It was not. Anyway. It was very.
So you're going to host?
Yeah, I can host.
Excellent. So the back end needs to know to change things. Oh, they already have. They're smart.
I think we all could at least tell one story where we forgot a power brick for something, and then you're like,
you're just like, oh no.
Yeah, one of our bonding routers, I forgot the power brick for it. Well, turns out my laptop power brick has almost enough wattage to power it. So like there's these nice cross combinations now where USB-C powers the other USB-C thing. But
I was thinking about that today. I was like, I just, for all the trouble I give USB-C, I really wish that everything that was DC powered was, anything that was small enough to be DC powered was just USB-C, and everything that was DC power or AC powered was just C13s. Like this, just the standard. If we just had those two, life would be.
I did find out that the little 2-prong plug that would go into your brick is the same plug that you could use for an electric razor. So once upon a time, when there was a Radio Shack, you could always get that additional cable if you left that somewhere.
I have been, the one of the secrets is that the Mac power brick, if you take off the connector, that the circle that it hooks into is the ground, but the two, you can just put any figure 8 into there and it'll work. It just won't be grounded. And so I used to pull them out if I forgot something. If I didn't have the right cable, like in another country, I would just pull the figure 8 out of the back of the TV. So that was, Chris is like, let's just keep going. Why are we
10 seconds, Alex?
Hi, everyone. Welcome to Office Hours. If you're watching on YouTube, you can find out more about what we do at officehours.global. Our first hour is general discussion about digital media production. Second hour is usually something we want to spend a little bit more time on. We're excited to have Matthew Cimaglia here from Alteon.io. This is a funny thing. Bill talked about Alteon. And then I was like, I don't know what that is. And then they saw that we had talked about them, and they said, well, would you like to talk more? I was like, yeah, sure, that'd be great. So they're on. They're going to be here for the second hour. I'm really excited to learn more about what they do. And Bill's going to actually run that second hour while we all learn there. So stay tuned for that. Let's go ahead and jump into the questions. Dave, what do we have?
Our first one is from Michael Marsh in San Anselmo. Given the recent advances in AI, how does CAPTCHA still work? Can't AI identify bicycles and check I am not a robot?
Go ahead, Jonas.
Here's the funny thing. AI can, because we all are helping with the data set. If you look at it, a lot of the chapter is used to train AI. So it's very obvious to us.
Okay, have a wonderful day. Drive safe, and I'll see you at 1 o'clock, okay?
You're not muted.
You're not muted, Chris. You are now.
And the other thing is with ChatGPT-4, an interesting thing that they have, there's this compliance group that does tests with AI. And they did this little experiment where ChatGPT should explain its reasoning while responding to everything. And they gave it the task to solve a chapter. And what it did is it went to Fiverr and found someone to solve the chapter for it. But then the person jokingly asked the AI, "Are you a robot? Because you can't solve these." And it made up a story about being blind or vision impaired and needing to get help solving the chapter that way. It is really interesting. What was really interesting is it explained, it understood that if it says it's a robot, it is not, that's the right thing to say, but it decided it's the better thing to say, no, I'm not a robot. So they can solve it.
I think there's going to be a lot of things that we think that we were trying to, didn't think robots could do. I think a lot of what we're seeing right now is that ChatGPT is just changing the way we think about how we interact with computers. I think a lot of people are afraid of that, but I think there's going to be a lot of really interesting opportunities. Let's jump into the next question.
The next question is from Andy Kokendorfer in Vieira, Florida. While streaming to LinkedIn through the API yesterday, LinkedIn started a new event rather than associate the live stream with the pre-configured event chosen with the API. Any idea why this might have happened? We used Restream.io with the LinkedIn API.
A lot of us haven't used LinkedIn that much for the live streaming because it's, I know when it first came out, it wasn't something you could connect to a brand. So a lot of us got excited about it, and then we're like, oh, we got to stream to our own page. And so that kind of made it harder for us. So a lot of us haven't played with it as much. Go ahead, Jonas.
Yeah, one interesting thing with LinkedIn is there is, I think, a 2-hour-ish window that you get an RTMP key for your event. So one interesting problem that we run into is you can't actually schedule an event too far in advance because the RTMP ingest point will have changed till you start your event. And back when we started using it, there wasn't a way to change it. So that might have been one of the things that you run into, that it just couldn't access the RTMP URL for that event again and then created a new one. We always use it directly into LinkedIn. You should be fairly certain to get in there now. But that's one of the issues we found with LinkedIn.
Next question.
Roscoe Jones is up next from Madison, Indiana. Roscoe says, from Mac Resolve, I gave a student some .mov files on a flash drive, but they have a PC and said they were unable to access them from the flash drive or Dropbox. I tried formatting the flash drive to exFAT. What would you recommend to fix the issue?
Go ahead, Jonas.
I'm thinking it probably is an issue with the underlying file and not the file system. So saying that it's an MOV file means that's a wrapper, but we don't know the codec. And especially with Resolve, if you have a Mac version, it could be ProRes in a MOV wrapper, which Resolve on the PC doesn't support. So I'm guessing that the student might mean I can't open it, as in if you drag the file into Resolve, it just doesn't display it. It doesn't even import it. And then there's also the possibility, if it's an H.265 10-bit file, the free version of Resolve doesn't support it, while the studio version, the paid one, does. So that's one of the things where we have seen differences. For example, from a GH5, the 10-bit files can only be read by the pro version of Resolve, not by the free version. So that are the two things I would check.
Go ahead, Courtney.
Yeah, he covered the codec issues pretty well. But if you put the thumb drive in and it says, "Do you want to format this?" Then it can't read the the formatting on the drive itself, which means it may be a PC that's older than 10 years or so, which doesn't know about exFAT. If you can format it FAT32, that's the universally exchangeable format, because Macs and PCs all read FAT32, and older PCs back 10 or 15 years ago will read FAT32. So that might be the way, but you can only use 2 gigabytes of storage, even if it's a 16 gigabyte thumb drive. So be careful on, you can't have any files larger than 2 gigabytes on FAT32. The other possibility is to format it in TFS, which Macs can read but can't write. But most PCs can read in TFS in the last 10 years or so. So try reformatting the thumb drive to either one of those, either FAT32 or in TFS, and see if they can read it. If they can't see any of the files at all, if they don't show up as MOV files, they just can't open them. But most modern PCs can open MOV files, but they don't necessarily have the ProRes codecs.
Go ahead, Sky.
I've, at once upon a time, changed the .mov to .mp4, and potentially that could allow your Windows machine to go, oh, I know how to read those. But that's an option there too.
Next question.
Next question comes to us from Noah Sargent in Fullerton, California. I'm searching for a 27-inch monitor that is thin. I'm looking to add it to a low-profile drawer slide so that the monitor folds out. Aiming for 1 inch thick or less. Any suggestions?
Yeah, some of the thinnest ones that I've seen are made by Asus and LG, so you can look at those. The problem is that most of the thin ones will not have a VESA mount, and I don't buy a lot of monitors without VESA mounts. so the VESA mount is a 100 millimeter VESA mount on the back. To me, is kind of one of the things that a monitor has to have, and that's mostly because I attach my monitors to everything. I don't even know where most of the legs are for most of my monitors. I just don't even think about using them. So VESA mount, C13, and HDMI are kind of my minimum requirements, and because of that, the monitors get a little thicker. So I know that you're trying to fit them into a 1U. You may have to go to a 2U. I do know that the 27-inch Dells would fit into 2U slot instead of a 1U slot. Next question.
Douglas Carmichael's up next. With the U.S. political winds rapidly turning against TikTok, what short-form video content platform will probably take its place if TikTok ends up banned?
Go ahead, Jonas.
I think YouTube Shorts has a pretty strong case right now, especially with the revenue share model. I think they have some better communication to do in explaining how the revenue share model works. But I think YouTube positions themselves great for a need for a new short form platform, and I think they're almost on par with TikTok now. The one thing that TikTok has that YouTube isn't there yet is the whole editing and all the teens knowing how to use it and all the little TikTok magic tricks. They don't have those yet.
Yeah, from the TikTokers that we've worked with in the past, there's a certain level where they are using the native app until they get to about 1 million users, and then they move over to other apps. So they start using a variety of different apps once they get into there, because now to them it means more. So, but a lot of people do use the native app at the beginning. I do think that YouTube is probably the heir apparent if TikTok gets closed down. I think that the other thing that they're really missing is the viral nature of sharing. So in TikTok, there is this whole culture of I'm going to use your video for my video, and YouTube's much more of a my video is my video and your video is your video, and so there's less riffing off of other people's videos, and that is such a huge culture in TikTok. And I think that that's the one thing when you go to because we're getting ready for NAB, I'm really watching a lot of YouTube Shorts to try to get a sense of those, and that's what I really feel like they're not as they're just not as fun. I think that's the real challenge there. But I will say that the quality is really there. Most of the other things are there. So I think that if TikTok gets shut down, I think you're going to see all those TikTokers, go over to Shorts and start to go. And I think it'll really change Shorts, because it'll be you had a great with shorts right now, it feels like you have a great college team, and then suddenly all these pro teams all just show up and start playing. So I think that for YouTubers, it'll be a little bit of an eye opener if all the TikTokers, the big TikTokers, start moving to YouTube. The quality will go way up, but it'll be hard for the YouTubers to stay quite, I think, as competitive because the TikTokers are so good at what they do. Go ahead, Chris.
I first of all, sorry about my mic earlier. I think Instagram shorts or stories or whatever the heck they call them, I think that's much more likely to replace TikTok than YouTube shorts. I think the thing that fascinates me most about the Instagrams is that is the discovery button or whatever they call it, the find thing. The way that it keeps track of what you've looked at and continues to show you the things that you've bought off on, and the fact that any one of the things that you click on there will take you on another journey. It's almost like going into a whole nother Instagram. It's like, oh, now everything is derived on this impression that that I gave it at some point. So like, I might be scrolling. I was like, oh, here's a Milwaukee toolbox. And I click on that, and all of a sudden I'm in Milwaukee toolbox land, and everything is about Milwaukee toolboxes. I think it's truly amazing. I get it that everybody's doing something like it, but I think that's the algorithm that you want to grab, copy, and implement for like a trade show. Yeah. Like there should be an Instagram instance builder, something for every trade show you go to. And people pay big money to get in there. And then once you click on that, once I click on one camera, it's like, wow, look at all this cool camera gear now.
I think that for me, I'm mostly looking at my only sense of what's cool and not cool is my kids. So I have a 14 and 15-year-old and looking at like that, what they watch.
I'm pretty cool.
They don't use Facebook or Instagram, and their friends use Snap and YouTube. Those are the two big things that they're on, and they don't. My kids aren't on Snap because I won't let them. But anyway, they're not even that interested. They don't really care. But their whole world is wrapped around shorts and long form in YouTube, and they don't pay any attention to Facebook or Instagram anymore. It's a really interesting phenomenon. Go ahead, Jonas.
I think it's also going to be interesting how TikTok are going to manage the shift, if there's going to be a shift, and if that's going to help them build communities. One of the things that I hear all the time is these huge TikTokers, but they really haven't built a community yet on short form content. And that's really, really hard right now to build the community on short content where they then go to the longer form YouTube, a series, a podcast. So I think that's going to be really interesting. Especially with YouTube having the clipping tool where we could say, hey, let's clip out a question per office hours and upload that as a short. I think that's where it could really accelerate and also like just help them get a better community and grow those communities better.
Yeah, I think that almost everybody I know, including myself, that we've been really successful is to use whatever platform you're on to build that community somewhere else. so you're constantly you give people a reason, and you'll see a lot of the YouTubers are using they're using either Patreon or they're using a lot of them are building their own Discords, and these Discords are massive. Like I'm on a bunch of these servers, and some of these Discord servers are just massive, and that means that they're building up that following, and they're getting them out there, and they're building that relationship outside of the platform. It's hard for the platform, and I don't know how those platforms really can do that effectively. Like to do the video part and the community part. It's an interesting puzzle. Next question.
Next question comes to us from Michael Marsh in San Anselmo. How do you get a headphone output from MacBook Pro to desktop speakers without a noisy signal? Wired headphones sound fine.
I go with Courtney.
Well, it depends really. Without knowing what your desktop speakers are, it's hard to answer that. If there's just speakers and they're not amplified speakers, if they don't have their built-in amplifiers in them, then you're taking an output that was really designed just to drive headphones, to drive speakers. So you're going to have to crank up the amplifier in the Mac, and you may hear a lot of system noise that way. Get amplified speakers and plug them into the headphone output on the Mac, and turn the volume down on the Mac so that you're not overdriving the speakers. And if that is what you're causing a noisy signal, it could be that you're if you have amplified speakers and you're hitting them with too much signal, it can be distorted, if that's what you're talking about, noisy signal. In that case, turn the output of your Mac down on the software side, and then turn the gain up on the amplified speaker a little bit. If you're overdriving them and hearing distortion, that would be your problem. It's just a problem of gain staging, so that you're not overdriving and you're not underdriving the input impedance into your amplified speakers. And if they're just speakers, get amplified speakers, and you'll have less of a problem. And if it's the output of the Mac that's a problem, there's also, you can go with something like this, which is saturate, which is a separate USB D to A converter, and it will give you the green one is a line out or a headphone out, and the red one is a microphone in. So that gives you another chance at getting less noisy signal out if it happens to be the amplifier built into your MacBook Pro.
Yeah, if it's really built as computer desktop speakers, it should sound fine when you go into the headphones. So that shouldn't be really a problem. If you're trying to put them into bigger speakers or nicer speakers, everything that Courtney just said is probably spot on there. The one thing that I would say is that when I go out to anything that's got XLRs or anything that's more than just really a desktop set of speakers, I'm going to go out of some kind of interface. So it's a USB to XLR interface. What I don't want is any kind of unbalanced connections. So I don't use. Friends don't let friends use unbalanced connections out of their computer. So not even for 6 inches. Like I don't. No unbalanced. So that's where you get all your noise. I can't tell you how many events I've been in, and I can hear a buzz somewhere on a speaker, and I just go down the path and find the person with, some Playback Pro or something else, and I just pull their headphone, pull the little pod thing that they have in there. I just pull it out, and the buzz goes away. So if you're hearing a buzz, that's a ground loop or some kind of pickup, and it's picking up. It's because you have an unbalanced connection. So if it's noisy and distorted, it's what Courtney said. If it's buzzy, then it means that you have an unbalanced connection that's picking up power around it. Go ahead, Chris.
It could also just be a bad cable.
Could be.
Also, I will say, I have for several years, and they still sell them, it looks like. For several years, I give you a recommendation. I highly recommend the Bose Companion 20 desktop speakers. They're driven off your headphone jack. They come with this little puck. You put the puck next to your keyboard, and it's a volume control. Whoop, whoop, whoop. You tap it, it mutes, and there's a place to plug in your headphones there. It mirrors it so that you don't have to reach back behind the computer to plug in the headphone jack. I have a couple pairs of them. I carry a pair with me in my road kit when I used to travel for work. The Bose Companion 20. Really cool little set of speakers.
Go, Jonas.
One thing to also keep in mind, it took me a while to figure out when I first set up my Mix Pre, is a Thunderbolt carries enough voltage that could also be considered a power cable. So make sure if you have like Thunderbolt, and I had a Thunderbolt into my Mix Pre and then like the headphone over that, and suddenly there's a buzz. So keep that in mind.
Absolutely. Next question.
Next one comes to us from Andy Kokendorfer in Vieira, Florida. When testing a mic for Zoom, what are your procedures and parameters? Thanks.
I think one of the most important things is get somebody on the other side. So when you're testing the mic for Zoom, they have a little tester in there. The tester is horrible inside of Zoom. So I played with it a couple times. The quality of the tester is so low and so compressed that it's not worth even opening up. So you really need to talk to someone who knows what they're listening to on the other side to tell you, does it sound good? Not everyone's going to have a meter like we have here in the show, so that might not be the viable way to do it. But you should talk to someone inside of office hours. The best way to do it is, if you are doing it, is jump into after hours and ask people to listen to your mic and let them know if it's working well or not. Next question.
Next one comes from James Fosling in Minneapolis, Minnesota. And James says, when an iPad gets corrupted, is there any recommendations to make sure you rebuild with all the same apps minus the corruption?
Go ahead, Nigel.
Yeah, when mine changes, when I change iPad, I tend to use the iCloud backup. I found that actually a very accurate way to get things back where I started. You just need to make sure you get the version that isn't corrupted when you back it up, when you recover.
So I have to admit, I mean, I definitely, the only thing that I have on my iPad that I really care about are my notes or my photos, but those are all somewhere else in iCloud. Because I bought all those apps, anytime I have a problem with pretty much anything, but definitely with my iPad, because all those apps are sitting there, I don't try to back or move or port anything. I grind it all the way down. I start over again and I just start installing the apps. In fact, I just started installing apps as I need them. So I've bought so many apps, so I put them on all my machines. They would just fill up pages. I mean, I can fill 10 pages of apps. So what I do is I go, oh, where's that app? And then I download it. Where's that app? And I download it. And so that keeps my iOS devices relatively clean by not having them just sitting there just because they were there before. Next question.
Michael Marsh in San Anselmo's up next. I'm looking for an app that will automate the stitching of many small maps into a single large one. Any recommendations?
Go ahead, Courtney.
I thought I knew of one, but I did find one. Google used to have something that would stitch together photographs. You have to have overlapping photographs. If your maps are individual maps that don't overlap, if the images of these maps don't overlap, you might have a problem. I did find an app called MapStitch Image Stitcher on Google Play. So there is an app available on the Google Play Store for MapStitch Image Stitcher. Look at that. Maybe it'll do what you're looking for.
Yeah, I haven't found a lot of automatic ways to do this. I imagine this is another one of those things we talk a lot about AI, that AI will eventually be able to look at and figure this out pretty quickly. But right now, I would probably end up taking it into Photoshop and mapping them, and I don't know how many small maps you have. One tangential tip is if you're actually trying to map something, a large area that's photographic, and you have access to a drone, and take a look at the 14-day free trial of Drone Deploy. You can literally just set it up of a Google Map area. Like, I just want to map this entire area, and you hit go, and the drone just takes off. The DJI ones are the ones that work the best, but it'll just take off and just start building a grid. You'll see it zipping back and forth as it builds that grid. It'll even come and land, let you change the battery, and let you put it back up again and let it do its thing. I've mapped a lot with that. So if you're looking at mapping something with a drone, that might be something that's really interesting. Otherwise, if you're just taking image-based maps, you're probably going to, I don't know, possibly Courtney's solution or by hand. Next question.
Next one comes to us from Henry Ramos in Yonkers, New York. Any iPhone, iPad apps that can utilize a 360 cam in a Zoom-like conference? Bidirectional conversation is needed. Use case, a realtor showing a home to a client.
So you can stream. I don't know if you can do it. I don't know if you'll be able to do it quite that way, but you can stream out from a Theta. So the little Theta that is about this big, it has, you can plug in a USB on the bottom and you can actually stream from there. There's a couple different companies that make a variety of different versions of these, but the Theta is the smallest and easiest one to use. Yeah, Bill's showing one right there. So that's the Theta. It has the two lenses. It will get rid of its own seam pretty well. You can take a lot of pictures. I take lots of pictures with that. And so when I'm doing a site survey, I do that. And then you can use, then you can stream that out. And then you just have to find a player. What you want to search for is a 360 player that you could insert somewhere into it. I don't know of any that, I think you'd end up with Zoom. If you wanted to show someone something, you'd end up in Zoom with them talking, but you'd be looking at the live stream from that piece. We've done bigger versions of this with Ozos. three Ozos work really well as a real estate thing, but they're not that expensive now. That when I bought them, they were $60,000. I think you can get them on eBay for now, like $2,000. But I don't know if the processing's around anywhere. Go ahead, Jonas.
You could take, I think the Insta360s allow you to stitch it down to a 1080 frame. What you then could do is you take the 1080 frame. There's some web frameworks. You use the Zoom Video SDK to get the full frame. And then you put that into a globe renderer. So you wrap it around the camera again, and then you have a 360 camera that you can move. That way you could do it, but that would be quite some development involved with that. And the quality wouldn't be as good as just having someone physically move the camera on location, because you would be bound to the 1080p for all 360 degrees.
And I will say that there's a whole section in Insta360 about real estate. So if you do Insta360 Enterprise Industries Real Estate, you'll find it there. So definitely check out what they're doing. I think that one of the things I would think about also is you may find it easier to manage if you, I don't know if the 360, because the quality of the 360 to get enough resolution might be hard for real estate. You may be better off with a Matterport and get the mapping of the entire piece. So someone looks through it through 360, but when they actually want to ask questions, I think that they might actually be better off with just a regular handheld camera where they're walking around. Now it might be something that you're using a GoPro or something that the real estate person can sit there and kind of do a Tom Scott kind of approach of kind of pulling things around and showing them stuff. But I think that might be better. It's just hard because it's hard to get close to something like, oh, I want to look at the stove, and getting up close to the stove is going to be hard with a 360. You'll never get close enough to it, where if you had a regular camera, you could do that. You still want the 360 so they can walk around in it. And that's where something like a Matterport is the easiest way to do those things and throw them together. But that's just something to consider. Next question.
Next one comes back from Andy Kokendorfer from Viera, Florida again. What is the psychological argument for widescreen aspect ratios? Why is 2.35 to 1 so appealing?
Go ahead, Sky.
I'm going to let Courtney handle the aspect ratio of the 2.35. I just know that the concept of IMAX was to engulf you in the experience. They're trying to get you out to your peripheral vision was, I believe, the goal of the person that was creating the IMAX experience. And I know here in Seattle, we were very fortunate to have the Cinerama, and there's also one there again in Hollywood, the Cinerama Dome, which originally used 3 projectors to create that full wide perspective of taking you, engulfing you in the experience. But it was very expensive because you had to film with 3 cameras and then you had to project with 3 cameras, which, while a very cool thing when it was created, became very expensive very quickly. So that's the psychological concept of is, since you're being entertained, is taking you into the experience. Now, the specific aspect ratio, that's where Courtney's the engineered technology.
Good, Courtney.
Well, I think 235 came about with Todd-AO or CinemaScope, which used anamorphic lenses to spread the image that was squeezed when it was photographed on standard 35 millimeter and 65 millimeter film to a wider aspect ratio to, as Sky said, to fill your peripheral vision. And if it wraps around and it fills your peripheral vision left and right, it puts you more into the scene, and you suspend disbelief that you're sitting in a theater watching a movie and you think you're actually there. That's the psychological reasoning behind it. IMAX is more of a square format, actually. Originally, it's just a huge screen with a lot of resolution to fill your peripheral vision, not only horizontally, but vertically as well. But 235 to 1 is still used in a lot of theatrical features these days, although there's a trend to go back to 185, which was the standard theatrical distribution aspect ratio for many, many years. So that's about all I know on aspect ratios. Wider is better.
Good, Sky.
To give you the full experience, smell-o-vision was tried, but they couldn't vacate the smell between events that you were being seen on screen. And in high school, I was a projectionist, and that was the manager's job, was to tell me to open the popcorn so that the vent of the popcorn would go in, because that's where the theater made the money.
Yeah, the other problem now that they have is that there's so much of the content being created for the television, not for a giant screen. And, there's a lot of talk about going back to 16:9, even though it's a very square format compared to the other ones, mostly because people keep on saying, why is the top and bottom cut off? so there's kind of this pushback from the user of, if you're going to produce something for streaming, I just want it to people feel like they want to fill their whole screen. And so I think that there's been more and more pushback that we've seen. I know that when we do events, people do these really wide ones for an event, for hybrids and so on and so forth. And we push back pretty hard going, well, most of your viewers are watching this in 16:9. So you just think about, whether you really want to put that big wide screen there, because it just means that you're going to have to build 2 versions of it, and that doubles the price oftentimes, or not doubles it, but increases it by 50%. So just, it's just cost. And then usually starts to, that's been slowly pushing down on the super wide screens that we've seen in LED walls over the past decade. Go ahead, Jonas.
I also find it interesting with the age of a lot of mobile phones. A lot of people changed away from 16:9. It's like 16:10 that most phones now have. So a lot of the VOD content on YouTube now actually isn't 16:9 anymore, which on the PC is crazy when you do full screen, and now you have black bars again, but on your phone it's great. And the YouTube app now allows you to zoom in exactly, so all your screen is filled, which I find really interesting, because now we're back to like, hey, let's keep some safe space at the top, at the bottom, because phone users will be zoomed in. It's quite the interesting like flow of like, let's go wide, let's go small again, let's do this, and yeah.
And then to make it more complicated, for a while people were like, well, how do we do movies in 360? And how are we doing immersive movies? But one of the things that a lot of people found is that generating content at 180 degrees, not 360, but 180 degrees is really cool. So there's a lot of people that are talking about shooting films, not immersive, like choose your own adventure, but just the film is what you see in front of you is 180 degrees, which is a whole fascinating thing in itself. Yeah, go ahead, Courtney.
Yeah, and there was a big discussion when they went to high-def television, when they were establishing the formats for high-def. They settled on 16:9, which is 1.777777 to 1. Because it was a compromise between the theatrical 185 and the 4:3, right, which standard def television was. So that's why you ended up with letterboxing on widescreen and letterboxing and pillar boxing on standard def to high def. So you're going to end up with black bars either way. And that's why 16:9 became the sun. I guess I was going to say bastard, but yeah, keeping it clean.
Yep, go ahead. You said it anyway. Go ahead, Chris.
And yet you said it anyway. Andy, I think the short answer to your question about why widescreen is more would you say a psychological argument for widescreen aspect ratios, because our eyes are next to each other and not on top of each other. That's what I would say.
Well, that'd be interesting if they're on top of each other. That would be a very odd
pair of sunglasses.
It'd be hard. The ears wouldn't work. Next question.
And the frames would close your mouth. You wonder why we are so obsessed sometimes on office hours and depth of field. This next question will bring some of it to light. Douglas Carmichael asks, Alex, what is that flashing device to the left of the QL1?
It's driving him crazy. I believe that's the Dante router. I mean, that's just a router that happens to be managing all the Dante stuff that goes on within the office. So I believe that's the router. That's what that router does. But yeah, a lot more in focus today than usual, because I'm using a little Insta360. By the way, something that was pointed out last night is that there is a reason that OBSBot might be more interesting to a bunch of us than the Insta360. So I would like to make that correction today. The OBSBot is addressable via OSC.
Oh, really? Zoom OSC can see it. Ooh,
someone's name who rhymes with Andy Carluccio read into the deeper documents, and the OBSBot is addressable by OSC. So a lot of us are going to look at it, and then I think we're going to do one of our first like mass emails to Insta360 going, hey, we're trying to make a decision between the OBSBot and your thing, and it's addressable by OSC and yours isn't. What's up? How you doing?
And isn't the sensor of the OBSBot also larger, like the OBSBot Tiny 2?
Yeah, it's larger. I think the problem is to me it's larger, but it doesn't mean anything because it's wider angle. Like the for me the downside of the OBSBot, why I completely just wrote it off, because I was like, it's too wide angle. Like I'm gonna have to zoom in. So anything that they added to the sensor doesn't benefit me at all. But now the OSC stuff, that makes it hard. I'm gonna have to buy at least one of them just to see what's going on. Yeah, go ahead, Chris.
For those who are interested, I am compiling a list of all the names from Discord that do rhyme with Andy Carluccio.
So a lot of fun there. By the way, if you want to ask questions, you can ask questions for the first hour. Also, take a look at Alteon's website and see if you have questions for the second hour. You can go ahead and throw those in any time. But first hour, still room for questions, so you can ask those questions now. Also, vote on the questions. The voting that you have on the questions really defines where they end up in that stack, and so it's really, your votes do matter. So definitely check out Mukana and check out those votes and throw some questions in if you have them. All right, let's go to the next question.
Rob Harris in St. Paul, Minnesota says, I get volume out of my Heil PR40. I just get volume out of my Heil PR40. I have to be speaking loudly, just an inch or two right into the diaphragm. For input, I've tried a Blue Icicle, a Behringer interface, and most recently a Mackie Big Knob Studio. I need more than negative 30 dB.
Go ahead, John.
Yeah, just as a frame of reference, I've got the Heil PR40, and I've tried all of the Scarlett stuff. I used to have the 2 or 3 different Scarletts. They barely drive, and now I have a Claret, and the gain is all the way up. I have PR40 on my MixPre 10, and my volume is just over 12 o'clock, about 1 o'clock. So you need good preamp.
Yeah, go ahead, Courtney.
Yeah, exactly. A good preamp that can handle maybe 65 to 70 dB of gain to use those dynamic microphones. Otherwise, you're not going to get enough. You're going to run out of gain. The MixPres, of course, have enough, and the Rodecaster Pro, which I am speaking on, is claimed to have enough clean amplitude to handle a Heil PR40. Okay, so you could look at those two if you're looking to spend $700 to $800 for a mixer that solves your problem.
Go ahead, Nigel.
Yeah, I was using a cloud lifter on mine to try and get it up, and it was, I think, just inducing too much noise into the system. And when I put it straight into the MixPre 3, I was able to get to the right level.
I think don't some of the Zoom ones have enough gain to make that work? So if you're looking for something a little less expensive, the Zoom ones are a possibility as far as what they have there. I do think that the cloud lifter, again, that's not something that I would recommend ever putting into a pipeline by choice. A lot of us carry the cloud lifters around in our backpacks so that when in a pinch we put them in, but I would never build a system around them. I'm not even sure if the person who makes the cloud lifter or the company that makes the cloud lifter would suggest that. Maybe they would, but that would be crazy. So the cloud lifter is really good for as a pinch of like, I can't get to where I need to get to for the show, but I wouldn't build a pipeline around a cloud lifter. And so you definitely want to look for one that, as said before, was negative or 60 to 70 dB of gain. Go ahead, Courtney.
Yeah, if you're looking at the Zooms, go with the F series, not the H series. So like the F3, they came up with this F3, which is a 32-bit interface as well, and it takes XLR inputs. That might do it for you. It's said to have the better preamps in it that the F series have in it. So if you're going to go Zoom, that's a way to.
But the vast majority of us are using MixPre 3s is where a lot of us have gone. Next question.
Chris Fenwick on the panel from Emeryville, California says, has anyone been contacted by compliancesolutions.org about their software compliance? Adobe has some really egregious demands in their ULA that we have all agreed to. That's their user license, right?
Go ahead, Chris.
Yeah, I don't know if, first of all, Alex, have you ever heard of this organization?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, the main thing that I've never been contacted by them, but we think about that a lot. So the main thing is that, and Adobe, I think, is one of the ones that works with compliance solutions. The bottom line is that for all the software that we've bought, there is a certain level of, there's maybe it says you can install it on one computer or 2 computers. You're not really buying, and oftentimes you're not really buying the software. You're, in some weird way leasing.
You're not buying it, you're leasing it.
Yeah, you're leasing that software from them. And so you don't really own it. And so in a lot of ways you can't, what's interesting is as you dig into it, you're not really allowed to sell it. Like you can't really, because you don't own it. You bought this like permanent lease.
Yeah, that's not the issue.
No, so the bottom line is that a lot of times people get a little loose. In the past, they've gotten a little loose before subscriptions of installing it on a couple computers and having one copy go into a lot of places, and all of that has become the what you put yourself at risk at when you own a company, and the reason that most companies don't have too much of a problem with this once they get going, is because, or if they're smart, they don't have too much trouble, is that one upset employee will call the compliance solutions and say, these guys are using a bunch of pirated software, and then they come down and it's like $250,000 a unit. I mean, it's enough to drown somebody's company to, get caught. Now, usually I've talked to people who have been called. Again, I've never had the problem, but that they say, I mean, they come in and they go, it could be $500,000 or $100 million of thing, and then they negotiate something down to, money, like 10 grand, 20 grand. Like, it's like not small number, not small potatoes, but they usually don't make you pay the whole amount. But they have a stick that is like, I think, $250,000 per infraction that was given to them by Congress. And so that it's a lot of, there's a lot of leverage there. Go ahead, Courtney.
Yeah, I was wondering if this was like ADA compliance, so that your screen's interface can be handled by screen readers, et cetera. Maybe Harshid can tell us more about that. But I think this is really just a serving lawyers service that makes sure that you can't be sued over some petty thing in your software.
So what has happened? Here's the problem. One, they send you these emails and they say, we're working for Adobe, but they offer no proof of that. So they've taken a paragraph. They might be working for Adobe, but they haven't proven that to me. Then they take a paragraph out of the EULA, and the stuff that we have all agreed to use Adobe software is really astonishing. It's like if you're a business, you relinquish the right to be audited physically and electronically once every 12 months. Like, they get to, Mr. Fenwick, we'd like to talk to you about your software. And then, let me see, what's the other thing here? You will provide us with all the records and information requested for us within 30 days of our request. And again, this organization contacts you with no proof that they're actually working for Adobe. They say they are.
Yeah. I mean,
maybe they are.
I would ignore all of that. Until I heard from Adobe, and I would, especially now most of us are on subscription. I mean, how do you can't really do anything that breaks the rules.
You can't, although I read something in one of they claim, again, this organization, was it what I say? It was Software Compliance Alliance, whatever it is. Here's a very interesting paragraph I just read. What is your understanding about? So Adobe says you can install this on 2 computers, correct?
Yeah, but the intention is it's same user, 2 different computers.
That's
the assumption is you're not putting it on 2 different computers and letting 2 different people use it. It's 2, and again, we always have to look at these. The EULAs are really aggressive. If Adobe actually did what they said that they could do in the EULA, the loss of users would be pretty intense. So there is a legal thing that they've had you agree to, but they couldn't enforce it without losing millions of people using it.
They'll lose me pretty quick.
Yeah. So I mean, I don't think that I think that there's a lot of times you want to write if you know that people are just going to click OK because they don't want to read all the words. You'll put a lot of things in there that give you a lot of latitude that's going to let you do whatever you want later if someone's really problematic. So if someone's doing something problematic, you give them no room. This is just how a lawyer works, is if you know that they're going to click through it, you give them no loopholes. You just want to take out all the loopholes they could possibly have, and that you know that they're going to click through it because they're not reading it. And that's how you get that. Now, it would be very crazy for Adobe to actually do most of those things because they would end up all over social media. And then, they did it, and so there's a limiter to what they can actually do regardless of what the law is. But they're going to do all of that so that if they find someone who is, if they take someone to court over software, it's rarely over you have 1 or 2 whatevers or whatever. And a lot of times people have just been asked to just buy the ones that you didn't buy, that kind of thing. And sometimes there's a little bit of extra, but a lot of times it's literally, we could charge you $1 million, but we just need you to buy the ones that you didn't buy, that kind of thing, and pay maybe a $5,000 fine or something like that. But the point is that that's all negotiable, and they don't want to do that. But it's if someone says, well, I actually did this and this and this and this and this, and the EULA leaves no oxygen, in there to argue about it if someone is egregiously taking advantage of the software. So I think that they do it. I mean, again, growing up as a family of lawyers, you put everything in you can, and because you can put all the things you want in there because no one's arguing. So you put all that stuff in, but they couldn't actually, in reality, do it because there's the physics of social media would push back too hard, and it would be too damaging to the brand. So
Right.
you just have to look at it like there's a reality to it, and then you have these little monkey solutions that are calling you the monkey software solutions that are calling you about it, and I would just ignore them. Just don't even bother. So anyway.
So one last question before we move on, just from a show of hands, and maybe we could put up the gallery view. The people here on the gallery panel, how many people are understand that the Adobe license agreement means that only one person can use the 2 installs that they allow?
I mean, understand that? I understand that.
So Alex, 1, 2, 3, half of the
I don't
panel.
understand, but I don't have any Adobe software left on my system.
Yeah. So go ahead, John.
Chris, you should just retire and build tall makers.
No kidding. I am so sick of this business.
Again, it just really isn't that. I don't think it's nearly as deep as it sounds. But yeah, next question.
Next question comes to us from Aaron Wilson in Lebanon, Tennessee. What is the best way to mic a trumpet? Also, what are your suggestions for microphones for both recording and live performance? It can be 2 different microphones.
I go with Sky.
I am not an audio engineer, but I know one, and I've sat next to Jeff Francis on this very panel before. So if you're available to on our Discord in this community, Jeff Francis does this for a living and has done it for many years and is brilliant at this question. I've also put a link in the chat from not Stillwater, Sweetwater, answering this very question and giving you all of your different options. But I know that means you have to read it and make choices and decisions. And Jeff's a lot more fun to do that.
Go ahead, Bill.
I remember seeing trumpets, and most of the ones in the early days, at least, were mic'd pretty much with those Crown large diaphragm connected microphones, the same one that Garth Brooks used to sing into. I would imagine there are better solutions now that we've had many years, and I agree that if you come on the audio days when people like Jeff are here, they'll give you the modern solutions for this.
Go ahead, Courtney.
Yeah, the Mickey answers, it depends. Because a trumpet, and I used to play the trumpet, is a very directional instrument. The sound comes out of the narrow bell and goes directly out from that. And so if you're off axis from the bell, you're going to have problems. That's why a lot of trumpet soloists have a thing that actually clips a small microphone onto the bell and holds the microphone out in front, as long as they're not using a mute, to mic the sound. That way they can get really creative in pointing the trumpet in a certain direction. So whenever you're micing a trumpet, regardless of the microphone that you use, bear in mind that the technique that the trumpeters are using, if it's a whole row of trumpeters, you need to put a mic in front of them and have them all point toward the mic. Otherwise, you're going to get a little bit of Doppler shift as they move back and forth, and strange artifacts. That's why they use clip-on mics sometimes for trumpets if they're moving around.
Oops, you're muted, Alex.
And Mickey prefers ribbons. Next question.
Joe Andrews in Lebanon, Oregon says, what would be a good microphone to get crowd noise and to the appropriate level for a stream being deployed in a swimming pool venue during large events? Ooh, that's a toughie.
A lot of times we've used a variety of shotgun mics as well as lavs. I mean, we've actually taken lavs and just dropped them out there and gotten some relatively good crowd noise out of them, and placed usually somewhere. Usually what we're trying to find is a sign or a return monitor or something that we have there that we can grab those. Getting into the crowd a little bit makes it a little easier not to get so much pickup. You have to be careful of where that crowd noise is going. It's only going to the stream and not back into the speakers. But we've used both shotgun as well as shotgun from where our positions are, so that we don't have to put them into the audience. But we have found that lavs work pretty well as well. Go, Bill.
That's one of those areas where I might be playful and try a parabolic reflector with a little cardioid inside of it. At least you can turn it in directions like toward the crowd or toward the pool. The water noise, I would imagine, is crazy there.
Yeah, the problem with the parabolics, of course, you pick up 3 people instead of, like, what we're trying to usually do is when we put those mics out there, we want to grab everybody or as many people as we can to kind of grab the scene. Next question.
Paul Terry Wallace, Austin, Texas, up next. Are cPanel and WHM the best way to manage websites?
Go ahead, Jonas.
I think if you need a management interface like that, you probably should rely on someone else managing your web server. Or there kind of was this like huge growth of like everyone has their own Plastic or cPanel or VMS panel server. But I think
can you explain to everybody what the cPanel is?
So cPanel is a software that gives you a GUI interface for all the for allowing multiple websites to be hosted on the same server. So you can have like the office hours and the after hours and like all those websites and subdomains on there. And then you can install plugins like WordPress. You can have a PHP server running, simple stuff like that. Behind the scenes, it probably uses a mixture between Nginx and Apache, which are servers and proxy servers. But if you don't know how to set them up and you just follow the tutorials, then you have to rely on cPanel or VMS panel to also protect you and secure you. If you want the best way, I would go with someone who knows what they're doing, who's experienced in managing and maintaining web servers, because you're constantly under attack. Like if you don't see attacks daily, you just already have been attacked. If I look at the logs of my web servers, there's like an attack every 30 seconds. And the question is just how fast can you respond to an attack that comes through? Because someday they will come through. It's not a question of if, it's a question of when. So if you go with a big provider or like one of the hosting providers, it's way more secure. And if you don't, and if you are experienced enough, you can also just set it up with the underlying frameworks yourself.
Good, John.
Jonas must have read my notes.
Very good. Next question.
Comes to us from Douglas Carmichael again. Telos is marketing a virtualized mix engine for the radio market. Are there any virtual mixers that could work for other audio applications? And he's got a link to this.
I think there's a lot coming up. I mean, one of the things that happened we saw this huge surge during COVID of not being able to do this, and audio turned out to be this super painful part of the pipeline that hasn't been solved very well. A lot of people use Mixbus, which was something that Harrison put out, but we're also seeing a lot of other things starting to crop up. I know I've been pinged about, hey, are you going to NAB? We have a new virtual server. We have a new virtual mixer. So I think that there'll be 5 or 6 in the market by the end of this year. Go ahead, Jonas.
Yeah, so there's CloudMX, which is a cloud-based virtual server from Waves that we have used for evaluation. It allows you to also bring in all the cloud, all the Waves plugins. Then like LXX, there's Mixbus, and then there's virtualized versions of different hardware software mixes. Lavo has a really interesting radio product. Relay is what they call it. That also is useful. We actually looked at that. That is pretty neat interface. But the one from Telos is pretty interesting because it integrates with all the existing system that Telos has. And we have been looking at a lot of the Telos stuff in the cloud, and they really seem to understand what they're doing there, which often is a problem with as old companies as audio companies mostly are, where they just can't keep up with like licensing needs for the cloud and are, overwhelmed with that.
We're probably going to spend a significant amount of time at the Telos booth, the Telos Alliance, because there's so many different things that they're doing that touch on what we do. So they have some comm solutions we haven't been able to get on the show yet. They have this solution. They have a lot of the linear acoustic stuff, the stuff I've used in the past for a variety of processing. So I think that we're going to end up working with them to probably spend a little bit of time with the LiveView, wandering around at NAB. But looking at virtual mixing consoles is definitely something we're going to focus on at NAB. So if anybody has those that they want us to look at, if you see the booths there, that's something that we are absolutely going to be focused on, is finding every company that's doing something like that. Next question.
Next one comes to us from Henry Ramos in Yonkers, New York. And Henry's back with, has anyone experienced a less expensive, not sure, USB mic for 6 people around a small conference table to use in Meets and Zoom? The quality isn't crucial, just intelligible speech.
I think that last that last term though is almost a contradiction in terms. They have it intelligible. It's pretty hard to make it intelligible and not worry about the quality. If you're looking for one USB mic, of course, there's lots of speakerphone mics that you could do. Another thing you want to look at is boundary mics for all 6 people. So boundary mics can be something that might work for you as well. But we really try to, unless the room is really treated, it's not so much the mics. A lot of mics will sound good if you have a room that's got soft walls. If they're a typical lots of glass and whiteboards, it just sounds bad. And you should definitely, whatever you're doing, you should listen to it on the other side. I spent 3 or 4 hours a day for a decade listening to conference calls with people with speakerphones in conferences rooms, and you spend half your time just trying to figure out what people said. Go ahead, Bill.
Alex is 100% right in this. I've had exactly the same experience. We used to use PZM, pressure zone modulated mics. They're a flat thing that sits on the table, but none of them have really high precision audio. And even those telephone conference systems like the big winged ones that you see just don't do a particularly great job, because somebody might be 8 feet away at one end of the table and someone else might be 3 feet away at the center of the table. And that inverse square principle is just going to make sure that no matter how much intelligence they put into it, it does not have the intelligibility of the other.
Yep. Next question.
Next one comes from Morgan Price in Victoria, British Columbia. What would your smallest good quality audio-only recording kit for field interviews be? Courtney just showed the Zoom F3. Would you use something like that with a mic and some in-ear monitors, or would you use something else?
Go ahead, Nigel.
So I use a Tascam, I think it's the DR40 or something. I found that range quite good. I'm not sure though it has an in-ear monitor on it. But those products range have changed so much since I bought it. But I found the little Tascam was really great. I tend to record on a camera and then on that and then mix afterwards.
Hey, Bill, real quick.
Yeah, the Zoom stuff is also very good. It's a process of field recorders. If you really want the high end and to explore this, look at field audio recording. There are some fabulous things, but they're very expensive at the top end, and some of these consumer things work just fine.
Yeah, go ahead, Courtney.
Yeah, the thing to look for is the 32-bit float, because that's an important thing for field. You don't have to ride the gain. Worry about riding the gain, because it has enough audio gain in its A to D conversion that you don't have to worry about it exceeding and clipping or going too low that you can't recover it without a lot of noise. So look for a 32-bit recorder, and it will solve a whole lot of problems.
Yeah, it is a I think that for anything that matters, I've generally, for the last 15 years, used a sound device. So that's a 744, 788, Scorpio, MixPres, all of those things. And it mostly has to do with just that they work all the time. And they, if it's got a button there, they do it does what it needs to do. And it's really thought out and it's really rugged. So those have been the case. And recently, and I agree with Courtney, 32-bit float on a field recorder is table stakes at this point. Like, it was really cool 2 years ago or 3 years ago. Do not buy a field recorder that does not have 32-bit float, because it gives you so much range to make errors. So you're not going to overmodulate. You're not going to if things look relatively close to what they need to be on the meters, you're going to be fine. And you're going to there's all kinds of things that are there. So the Zoom, I think Zoom I've used the Zooms as a cost-effective. I know this will sound horrible, but as a disposable recorder. I've been in a lot of places where there's chances where it's not good for me to have a recorder. so I in those cases, I've used Zoom because I could just throw it out the side of the car, and I'd be more resistant to doing that with sound devices. And so, but the Zoom has been, has produced lots of quality audio for me all over the world, as well as the sound devices ones. But if it matters and I'm doing it all the time, I'm using sound devices. If I'm in a more aggressive location where I may not come home with it, I use a Zoom. Next question.
Comes to us from Alex Forty Golner in London. What do you speculate is the future of RED cameras? I got the feeling that they wanted to be bought by someone else.
Red, I think that Red was an incredible thing when it came out. So when Red came out, I think this would have been 2007 or 8, I believe, somewhere in that range. And I know some friends that were I think Emery Wells, who started Frame.io, was probably, I think he bought number 42. It's either 40 or 42 that he got of the Reds, and he was excited about it. And I think that they had a moment, and I think that they changed the industry. They changed the cost structure of what it takes. But I think that the problem they've really had is that the workflow of the cameras is not great. The workflow of the data that comes out of the cameras has been really painful. And I know that I used Reds for a long time. I owned a couple Reds, and finally just got to a point where, whether it was on-site fan noise or other things like that, I just chose to move away from them. And I found that dealing with the data on the other side was pretty painful. So compared to all the other pipelines. And so I think that's been the real problem for me. Go ahead, Courtney.
Yeah, Red has always taken the path of building blocks. So you start with the sensor, just the sensor, and then you add this, and you add that, and you add this, and you add that, and you add 20 different modules onto it, and you build out something the size of a Volkswagen eventually. And there's other better solutions that have come along that are not as proprietary as the Red Raw or the Red data handling of those. And they've branched out too. Red bought a studio here in Hollywood, Red Studios, which is the old Renmar stages. So they now have production stages, and they're branching out. I don't think they're going to stay in the camera business for very long.
I think that the big thing that they got squeezed by is Arri just took over. Like when Arri got its head around how to do digital, they produced what every filmmaker wants generally for a major feature film. And Blackmagic came up the other side and gave everybody else a whole bunch of stuff. And Sony pivoted really effectively into the lower cost solutions. They produce incredible cameras under 10 grand now that they didn't do before. And so I think that Red got pulled between just squeezed between those two markets in a hard way. And so I don't know if they'll survive, but they'll be around for a little while longer. And now I'm going to hand this off to Bill.
Thank you, Alex. We're very excited today to be talking about Alteon IO. For those of you who aren't familiar with it, it's a CMS or content management system that has been optimized for modern video workflows. One of those things that allows collaboration and content sharing. And in the spirit of full disclosure, Alteon provided me with a chance to explore the portal a bit. I'm in my early experimentation, but I'm very impressed. It's beautifully designed, and my initial experience with it have been very positive. And to help us explore Alteon in more depth, we have with us today their CEO, Matt Cimaglia. Matt, how are you?
Hey, Bill. Great to see you.
It's great to see you. We're really excited to get a look at this. Can you start us off by telling us a little bit about the design process behind Alteon and what you guys are trying to do?
Well, I think actually it's a natural segue based on what you guys were just talking about Red, right? It's the production industry has been largely democratized, and look at what we're doing right now. This is a television show, if you will, in every sense of the word, that would have been, millions and millions of dollars to produce, and satellite trucks and, camera teams all around in everyone's houses or in studios that you guys would be renting. And now we're able to produce really good quality content that people are engaged with every day. And, as technology evolves, I think that you see other companies benefiting from that if they're able to transition quickly enough. And the companies that aren't transitioning or reading the room, if you will, those are the companies that are left behind. And I think that it's always important for all of these companies to also recognize the fact that I remember NAB in past decades, you go and it's what's the latest lens or what's the latest camera attachments or what are the latest, essentially cameras or chips that are coming out for those cameras to make it look better. And I remember right before COVID going to NAB, and it was a very different show for me. And it was the talk of the town was cloud. Everyone started talking about cloud. And it's just fascinating to see how much we've shifted. And I think going into the design process, as you asked, around Alteon, this stemmed from me working in the industry for almost 20 years. So I started out as an editor for NBC Network News. I was at the Today Show and Nightly News during a transitionary period when they went from analog to digital. And I was this young 20-year-old kid that they'd send all over the world. And, I can edit endlessly and produce endlessly without any sleep and prove to them that you could actually produce breaking news on a computer. And it was, it's kind of crazy to think about today just because of what we do and where we are in time. But that was really a transitionary period then. And, I got to see this wave happen, and I created a production company that ended up becoming a full service agency. And we service a lot of Fortune 100 and 500 companies around the world. I exited that business about 6 years ago. And again, I wouldn't say that Alteon is necessarily just a content management system. And I know that this sounds a little bit flimsy right now, but we always say that we're a production ecosystem because we are over the next year going to be expanding that ecosystem out into other formats of what you can receive as a user of Alteon. But right now, we've been very focused on the last 4 years of building cloud. And this stemmed before COVID. And I always joke about the fact that I wrote an article for Forbes in December of 2019 about your remote workforce and mitigating against risk and making sure that you have distributed teams. And this was coming off the tails of the sort of California wildfire season that was pretty bad that year. And I come from Florida, and I've witnessed countless hurricanes in my lifetime, and I've covered countless hurricanes through NBC. And I always saw what a weather event that occurred in a specific area would just completely decimate production. You couldn't go into your office, you couldn't have access to your files, and so on. So really kind of stemmed from that as well. And we always knew that we were going to build something that had a little bit of an uphill battle, right? We knew that we were going to have about 5 years to convince people that, hey, it is acceptable to work remote or to have people working in distributed teams. And then 2 months later, COVID hit. And we broke ground, and COVID hits. And IBM, one of our business partners, had released, they forgot that they were releasing it, but they released in, I believe it was April of 2020, an article about Alteon and about how we were building this software. We could not answer the phone quick enough. I mean, there were so many people that were calling us saying, hey, I read about this article about Alteon. How do I get logged in? And we had just come up with the name of the company. And it was one of those like perfect storm moments. So, we knew we were going to take a couple of years to build this product and really perfect it. And it's been incredible for me because it's a product really built by creatives for creatives. And we've seen other platforms out there that are just way too overly complex. And when it came down to the design system for it, I'm very OCD, and I'm very much a stickler for, I only want to see in front of me what I absolutely am going to use, not everything else. Put away the clutter, because there's already so much fatigue as a creator of logging in and out of multiple platforms, or where is this button versus that button on single purpose apps, or, hey, did I upload this file to this service or this service or this service, or, oh, wait, it's on my hard drive. So really kind of going into a lot of the fatigue that a typical creator has on a daily basis, that's shifted a lot of our mindset on UI. And, all of us collectively are creators in the whole arc of a story, if you will, for the production process. It's no longer a single job of a person that's just doing one thing. And I think that's really kind of a UI that we had to pay attention to.
So as you use this tool, what's my experience? I know I've uploaded some stuff into the cloud. What happens next? What's my experience like?
Yeah, I mean, I think that one of the biggest elements is transcoding. A lot of people that are shooting on, let's say, Blackmagic, for instance, you shoot on a Blackmagic camera, it produces a beautiful picture, And then from there, you have to transcode it locally on your system. And that might take a day. And that's, if you have one computer, that's completely derailing you from doing any other work because it's using that computational power of that local system. But now being able to upload raw RED files into Alteon Cloud, we're transcoding that media so that your entire team has access to it, and it's also generating proxy. So if your offline editor wants to use a proxy workflow for the NLE that they're in, whether it's Premiere or Final Cut Pro, which we support natively, we are thinking about and talking about supporting Blackmagic Raw potentially by the end of this, or I'm sorry, Blackmagic Davinci resolution by the end of the year. But there's a lot of stuff that we're focused on right now, and a lot of exciting things that are going to come up at NAB.
You mentioned the integration with IBM as the cloud part of this. Does that mean this is a global service? Does it work everywhere?
Yes. So right now we have been focused on a data center here in the U.S. Come Q2, we're going to be expanding out globally. So this has been always a strategy of ours for the last couple of years, and we've stuck to that strategy so far. And there's a lot of other regulations and laws that go into place when you're going into other territories around the world that obviously we're trying to follow and make sure that all of our users globally have the best optimal experience. And by doing that, that's putting data centers everywhere. And if you're a user in the UK, for instance, why not use servers that are hosted in the UK so that it's as close as possible? But we do have some early beta testers in Amsterdam right now who are testing it, and they're actually having really good performance off of our data centers here in the US. So it just goes to show the connectivity that we have globally right now and how we're able to support things.
The world keeps getting smaller and smaller. Describe your typical user from the low end to the high end. I imagine you have big companies and you also have individuals.
Yeah, I mean, we have a fair amount of influencers that are on the platform right now. Again, these are these one-person teams. It's I'm shooting everything, I'm editing everything, I'm organizing everything, and I'm outputting it out to my TikTok channel or my YouTube channel. So we have that end of the spectrum, and then we all the way up to we have people that are producing TV shows on it. So it's some of the streaming services and whatnot. It's people that knew of services that existed potentially at larger studios or production facilities that they were working on with at one point in their career, and they knew that these tools existed in some fashion, but now that they've gone off on their own or they've spun up their own production company, they obviously don't have the millions of dollars that it takes to go and support one of these, larger dams, if you will. And they see what we have in our integrations, and it very much is a multi-tenant environment. And we did that purposefully. We always built this system as if we were one of the major studios, but then we wanted to splice it out and give access literally to everyone.
We've got some questions here from the panel coming in. Alex, do you want to take us into that? Whoops, you're muted.
I've got a couple that for you. So first, can you apply LUTs in the transcode?
Not yet. It is something that we are working on. We've done a lot of Blackmagic tests, and as we get into other raw formats this year, so in early Q2, we were actually licensed Apple ProRes RAW from Apple. We're one of very few companies that have been granted that privilege. So that's going to be really exciting for us to be able to support that, especially with some of the new DJI products that have come out recently. And then later on this year, it'll be Red RAW and Airy RAW that we're transcoding in the cloud. But when we start to get a little bit more robust on the raw side of things, supporting LUTs is definitely something that's in our roadmap. Good question, though.
Have you thought about basic assembly edits in the cloud? So not replacing what Final Cut does, but I've got a bunch of stuff and I just want to cut it together and deliver maybe the raw data with an EDL or something like that to Final Cut or Resolve.
wait for another couple months and see what we announce.
Okay, great.
Is that an NAB hint? Maybe
no, actually, that's not. It's definitely not an NAB hint. But look, I think that we're a relatively small people of 50 for this company, and to be at this stage that we are, I'm so proud of the product that we built today, and the circumstances that we built it in. I mean, it was building a team at the beginning of COVID and trying to, really rally the troops, if you will, and tell people we need to keep working on this because there's a need for it. We certainly are at a point right now where I feel incredibly comfortable with the product. Bill, you've been testing it. We have other people that are testing it. We have schools that are testing it now for their school systems to see if they could bring it into their curriculum for next year, which is exciting for me because I personally got my sort of itch, if you will, for the industry in elementary school. But when it comes to focus, we're always focused on making sure that we do something really well before we then expand out and add another functionality, right? So we have a lot of people that come to us and say, oh, well, you don't do this, and this. And then we go to them and say, well, do you do that now with your workflow? And then immediately they say, well, no, I don't have AI, image recognition on my hard drive. And I'm like, well, then, give us a little bit of a break. We're getting there, but
GPT just came out.
Exactly. So, I mean, we launched public beta at NAB last year, just to give you a perspective of where we are as a company. And, we largely launched I would say our best public release was probably in around October of last year. So not too far in the past that we've been sort of releasing these various versions. But I guarantee you what you see at NAB, even today, is a very slick, streamlined product. It's going to be even more refined.
Is there any in the transcode process of this building? It may not be there now, but has there been thought about adding heads and tails? So in a lot of our automated encoding systems that we've used in the past, I throw a bunch of stuff into it. It grabs some metadata, applies it to an open slate, just so that I know what I'm looking at as it delivers it to the team.
Yeah, I mean, it's not something that's not a workflow that we would necessarily think about. I would say that more than anything, all of our we built sort of an item structure, if you will, and within that item structure, it's a container. So that container contains the metadata, the sidecar file, the proxy, and the originals, and we never touch the original. So that always stays to its original pristine quality. I would say that in your workflow, it's still a little bit of an analog workflow. I hate to tell you that, but I would argue more around having that data at your disposal, at your fingertips, using a proper UI like Alteon could potentially simplify that problem that you have. And also, when it comes down to the proxies, it has to be frame accurate. So when you're doing a proper offline-online edit, if I have a proxy that's slightly different from my original clip, everything's out of whack now. So that's something that we've really been able to solve as a problem there, especially when you're doing edits quickly.
Yep. So paint me a picture of how you would do this project. So we're covering NAB. So we're descending on NAB. We've got about 15 people on the ground, and we've got about 35 people offsite that are going to be, working on post and cutting and, commenting and so on and so forth. We currently, I mean, for this show, for NAB, we'll be using LucidLink to tie everybody together and make all of those things happen. But tell me whether you would integrate with LucidLink or whether you see yourself as the replacement for that. And also, like, how you would use it. So we've got people on phones, they've got live views, they've got the ability to upload things that are from camera files. We have people off site that are editing those pieces out. And I'm just so I can understand your product. My thought is that if you can just explain, like, how would you execute that with your product?
Well, on the first part of that question, on the LucidLink thing, I'd pay attention to what we might be talking about at NAB. I actually have a call with them right after this. On the LucidLink side,
big fans.
let's just see what happens. But really, and my CTO is listening right now probably and saying, Matt, don't add one more thing to, no, I would say, all right, so here's your workflow. What if you have somebody shooting on something like this? We just released this week an iOS app. So you're shooting on your iPhone.
And do you shoot with with your OS app, or we're using something like Filmic or the built-in?
Whatever you want.
Whatever we want. Okay.
Whatever you want. And you go into the iOS app, you click upload, depending on the 70,000 people there, and if they're going to degrade your bandwidth on the cell service, that I can't really guarantee, but who knows? Maybe you find a hotspot somewhere at a booth that might be really cleverly positioned at NAB.
So we can go to the press pad. We could find our way back. We shoot a bunch of stuff, go to the press room, and upload it from there.
Yeah. So I would say there's a couple different ways, and this is where Alteon gets really slick. So what if you have a computer that you set up in the press room, and you know that it's on a dedicated line of some sort or on fast Wi-Fi, and somebody goes out and shoots on a card and just brings that card back to the computer. There's no physical person there, but let's say somebody here is in Burbank. I'm just making that up for argument's sake. Okay. Text to Bill. Hey, Bill, just plugged the card into the computer in the press room. Bill goes into Alteon and actually sees that card using our accelerator. And the accelerator is leveraging Aspera. So now in the press room, we've given you Aspera for free because all of our users get access.
And I know Aspera well to know, and no one else in the press room will like you.
Exactly.
Because you're going to.
But we don't care because we want really good quality content for you guys.
Yeah, exactly.
So now what happens is Bill actually is able to transfer that file, accessing the hard drive on that computer through the Alteon accelerator. So you just pop a card in, text Bill, head back out with your new fresh card. Bill is uploading all of those files and verifying those files are being sent up to Alteon Cloud and that they're existing for the entire team to now have access. Because somebody else on the team might access the Alteon app and be like, hey, what was shot by Alex? I want to go and see his folder. And you go and you start clicking through our app and you see all of the shots that Alex shot so that you don't double up on that. Or Alex might go to somebody else and say, hey, I was at this booth. I didn't shoot this one thing. Can you go and get a little bit of extra coverage for that? So now it really becomes a collaborative process throughout the whole NAB of news gathering, if you will.
Right.
I expect you guys will be at the Alteon booth a lot, shooting a lot of content. And one of the things that I would say there too is we're going to have 12 systems on the show floor for people to use. So if you guys come into our booth and you say, hey, I want to upload some content here, by all means, we would love for you to do that. But in an easy workflow scenario, I would say, you guys are uploading, somebody else is bringing that footage in and editing it. Because of the slow Wi-Fi speeds or because of slow speeds in some of the hotels, take advantage of the proxy workflow, right? Download the proxies. They're very lightweight files. They're 720p MP4s, not a whole lot of space. I was at a convention last week with 2,700 students, and we were doing demos every day, and we just kept using proxies as downloads, and they were quick. I mean, they really downloaded quick. That is not Aspera for download, but its standard download speeds are actually pretty substantial.
Yeah, interesting.
I hope I talked through the workflow well enough.
I think so. So then,
without plugging our booth as many times as I could.
Exactly. What hall is the booth in, so that we know where to take our files to upload?
We are directly next to LucidLink.
Oh, interesting.
Go figure.
Dark Hall.
How convenient.
Right across from Avid.
Yeah.
And right by the main stage.
It's great. And then as people are editing, would someone pull that? I guess the editors would like as they're sharing files, their edit files, and so on and so forth. Now, again, typically we're doing a lot of that in LucidLink right now. It'd be interesting to see we're really interested to see how we would tie in Alteon with LucidLink, where we would, have.
Me too.
Yeah. So, all right. So we'll come back to that. My last question for you before we hand it off to somebody else is: you said you're going to probably handle other formats that might be there. Is USDZ one of those formats? Or can you say?
We have a pretty long list of formats that we're going to be supporting in the near future. Again, we have developers that are just working on the Alteon transcoder. And what's been great about that process is we built it as its own standalone service. So within Alteon, a lot of what we've been building is not just for Alteon to consume, but for some of our technologies to be leveraged outside of Alteon. So we actually have a few companies that are on the enterprise side right now that have their own DAM. And they're like, we love your transcoders, or we'd love to take advantage of your transcoders in the cloud. Can we do that? And certainly that's how we built it. So we're able to give those API keys off. So we have a team just dedicated to building out this transcoding service. And again, you will see other formats every month sort of be a part of the fold, if you will. But I have the list. I don't have it right in front of me, but we will add it if it's not.
That's great.
John Preto's next up. John?
Hey, Matt, thanks for your time. We appreciate having you here. I'm an old IT networking guy, and when I hear your name, I think of Alteon, the networking gear. Do you have any issues or challenges with that old brand name?
No, I mean, I think it's been largely defunct for a few years, but also there's like an Alteon Health that exists out there that we know of. Our patent lawyers and our trademark lawyers have been able to navigate a lot of that through, and we've received proper registration for the company. The naming process of Alteon was actually just super fascinating for me. I get very geeked out about that. We worked with Lexicon Branding in San Francisco. And they're sort of legendary behind Pentium or Swiffer or Sonos, or there's that the name list goes on for companies that they've produced. And working with them, what was also really great is they made sure that this doesn't mean FU in Mandarin or something. So we've done a lot of checks in terms of the naming for the company, and we've had it for a number of years now. So we're pretty good there.
Okay, it's about time to turn our attention to producer questions. For those of you in the producer core out there viewing the show, you are more than welcome to add questions. We have a solid group of them to start out with. So, Alex, are you going to read questions for this? Oops, you're muted.
Absolutely. Next question is from Fred Eric Eckert in Bad Hernab, Germany. And Fred asks, will there be a Davinci Resolve integration like there is for Final Cut and Premiere?
Let's see what the year brings us. But I would say it's not out of the question.
Okay.
Very good. Next question is from Sky Gleason in Seattle, Washington. And Sky asks, where does the final decision maker, content producer, fit into your system?
Yeah, so it's actually a really cool question. We have a few scenarios within Alteon for non-users. So upon ingest, one of my coolest favorite features is the ability to send a request link out to somebody that doesn't have an Alteon account. And I'm gonna take you through the story process here of I'm gonna answer that question, but let's say I hire somebody to do audio work for me today, or it's a stringer that I've hired for something that I'm working on. I can actually send a non-user upload link, and they receive this email, and I just drag files into that link, hit upload, and it uploads not only into the project, but also into the folder that I designated that person to be uploading content to. So I can constantly be getting footage from shoots all around the world from various contributors. We have a super PAC in Washington, actually, that's using it right now for people that are knocking on doors at houses to say, hey, do you want to vote for, Susie Joe for mayor or something like that? And they'll shoot on an iPhone. And none of these volunteers have Alteon accounts. So they'll shoot it, they'll upload it using this link, and then the people in DC are actually receiving it in their edit bay. On the flip side of that, we can send out non-user preview links. So if I have a full production that's being shot, I edited it, and I want my producer or a decision maker or a client to be able to see that, they receive a link from Alteon. They can watch it. Happy times. But we also added 3 other parameters. 2 of the parameters are giving them access to the proxy file or original file to download it. Okay. And then the other parameter is password. So that's another, really key ingredient. And that password is specific to that link. So it's not related to your user account. It's not related to them. It's not related to anything else. So you can make up a password on the fly for that. And then the third part is expiration. So you can actually set it to expire in a day or a week or never. And I personally, when we were doing a lot of branded content for companies, I would send a YouTube link out, and this is 10 years ago, as a preview, and they would receive the link. And then the next day we'd say, okay, go ahead and watch. Here's a new version. And they'd keep looking at it and they'd say, well, Matt, I'm watching it. You've not made any changes. And I'm like, well, what link are you using? So the ability of being able to remove that link or set it to expire automatically within a day is actually a really critical feature. And then in the near future, and I'm talking within the next month or 2, we're going to be allowing commenting for those links as well. So it's the ability of being able to have a decision maker that doesn't have an Alteon account, receives a link, they have their email attached to it or their name attached to it. So when they write comments in that video, those comments would end up showing up in your NLE, whether it's Premiere or Final Cut, potentially down the road, Davinci. Again, you're streamlining that entire production process without forcing people to have Alteon accounts.
Good.
Next question.
This guy had a follow-up, I think.
Yeah, I just the annotation of your decision maker. You say, is that a part of the process currently, or is that in the future?
So currently, if anyone wanted to make comments or annotations to something, they would have to have an Alteon account in order to do that. And a lot of that is just around security and auditing processes. So when that comment shows up within, again, your NLE, it'll say, Bob commented at this time, this comment. So it kind of, we want that because, again, as a former editor, I don't want 50 comments out there and I don't know who made the comment. I think that's just as valuable information as the comment itself, because if I have to trace it back and say, well, I don't know what you mean by blue dot, and there's 100 blue dots on the screen, then it's sort of irrelevant to me as data.
And have you looked at, or actually, have you managed a link being a container that you keep on changing the movie? So for reviews, one of the things that we do is we have we'll give a client, a producer, or a folder. There's one link. They don't have to think about it. But as we do updates, they're getting the same link. And we do this inside of Frame. This is what we use right now is Frame for those kinds of things. And we throw those in so that they're always getting the same link, but it's a different video as it gets updated. Is that a concept that you guys are at all?
Well, first off, I think for non-Adobe users to then have to go get Adobe subscription for Frame, it becomes a little bit difficult. So it's great that there's other services that are popping up out there.
Definitely glad that there's other services. I'm saying I'm just giving a point of reference.
For sure.
It's an expensive thing for us to use, but it's but I'm saying that behavior is something that's super useful for us. That someone doesn't have to find we can keep on giving them version 5, version 6, version 7, and we're not sending them a new link. We're just sending them this is the place that you go to look at the thing.
Yeah, check out what we have at NAB.
Excellent. All right. Next question. Oh, I'm sorry.
Oh, go ahead. Doesn't matter who says it. Next question.
Next question is from Alex Forty Goldner. And Alex asks, for when you are dealing with comments about a relatively short asset, a motion graphic overlay, for example, in a long timeline, are you able to include the relevant time code within the asset with the comment?
Yes.
Well, that's pretty definitive.
Shows up right away.
Okay, perfect. Next question. from Douglas Carmichael, and he says, could you see your product scaling to the level of a major studio film or similar?
I think, as a founder of a company, that would be an incredible moment. I always said from the beginning, I remember I was with a colleague of mine in San Francisco probably 2 years ago. It was right after sort of things started opening up again. And we kind of had this moment of looking at each other being like, how incredible is it that we're able to do what we're doing? And the thing that I get most excited about is hearing from users of what they produced and what we were able to help them produce. And I'm excited for the commercial that people are talking about. And we know that Alteon helped produce that commercial. But I think it's always important to focus back on our roots, which is the 99% of the world that's been very underserved to date. And, it's always the sort of kiss of death for a product when they start getting in with a major enterprise client, because a lot of that comes, there comes some fame to it and other sort of elements. But really, when it comes down to it, that enterprise client is probably sucking you down and asking you for a million different changes and fixes and attention on them, and pulling you away from the individual users. But I think what we're seeing, especially with even the last Oscars, how many of these movies were produced by very scaled down teams because of COVID. And you're able to produce in a very unique way today using the technology that we have at our disposal. So I wouldn't put it past us to be able to be part of a major motion picture at some point.
I do think it does seem like the elections are going to be a big deal for you, mostly because I think that there's just such an amount. You're mentioning that in the collaborative nature of campaigns, of needing to, especially national campaigns, to be able to aggregate huge amounts of content from all over the United States, at least, seems like a real big opportunity there.
Yeah, and I think also just coming from my news background, I mean, I covered campaigns and I've covered many news events that happened in the world. So I understand what it takes to do quick turn production, and I understand what it takes to have many players involved, all collaborating in very harsh environments, quite frankly. But when it comes down to our app, for instance, for a embed that's covering a campaign trail that's by themselves, we know they're probably going to shoot on iPhone at this point, or a phone. Let's just put it that way. So if you're shooting on iPhone and you have our native app running on the phone, and you're able to upload that content directly to your editor somewhere in the world immediately, that becomes a really streamlined process that you don't have to think about what you're doing from the technology side. So you're able to go out and cover the news and really focus on the story that you're trying to tell without being bogged down by many technical decisions along the way.
Yeah, absolutely. Next question is from Alex 4D Golner in London. And Alex asks, what do you see is the future of object-oriented media, where productions are distributed as clouds of media clips plus presentation metadata, such as multiple timelines?
Yeah, I mean, I think that comes down to a little bit of our item structure and making sure that everything's in a container. Keeping even right now, I'm on a group inside SMPTE, and it's talking about lens metadata. And one of the really cool geeky things that I get in that is being able to retain lens metadata inside of our platform that's also attached to the clip. So if I'm a VFX artist, instead of trying to figure out and gauge, well, did they change the exposure here, or what was the focal point of the rack focus while they were chasing somebody down the street, and somebody is spending a month to try and figure out those key points, being able to catalog that in the camera by the half frame, and then bring that metadata into Alteon as a sidecar file within the item structure. And then when you go out to your VFX artist and they see this shot, again, it's being edited on a standard editing platform. Somebody else is taking that same file and bringing it into a VFX machine, and they're able to drag that sidecar file on top of it. You no longer have months of trying to figure out where did these various events happen within the lens. And then also lens curvature, right? Because I know the serial number of that lens and I know what model the lens was, I can apply a curvature to that visual effects shot that I'm producing, all because of the data that's contained within this item structure.
My first experience with that was I worked on Star Wars Episode 1. We were getting camera reports from the set at Leavesden, and we were like, "This is not a 35 millimeter lens."
Yeah.
Yes, we've come a long way. But you were just like, there's some piece of paper that someone wrote while they were rushing around, and they just wrote this, and so yeah, getting all that metadata to follow the clip is usually the biggest problem.
Yeah, it's about 20 minutes to. Oh, go ahead, Matt. Finish up your answer.
Yeah, I mean, just one more thing on metadata. One of our other big initiatives for the company is blockchain, and I know that that's sort of a dirty world in the world that we live in today, and people are very confused about a lot of the aspects to it. But I've never swayed away from it. I'm still very cognizant of the good and the bad that has happened over the last couple of years. But largely, when you think about metadata, putting metadata on a blockchain and locking it in and having a proper provenance of that data source, so that, let's say, this is being shot today, but somebody can go and change the metadata and say it was shot last week. That's very easy in a lot of digital asset management systems. But being able to know that there's a file attached with metadata and it can't be altered, but it can be added to, right? We want to add to metadata, but knowing that there's that provenance there and being able to track it over time to say, hey, was this really shot last week or was it shot today? That also goes in line with camera sidecar metadata and everything else that we're talking about here, so that at no point in the production process can that be altered.
Yeah, it seems like that's important for filmmaking, but it's also really important for news gathering and everything else. One of the problems that a lot of us are talking about a lot is, how do you know what's real anymore? And that may not be the only way to do it, but how do you know that? But with the blockchain, to your point, you could say, we know that it was shot with this camera, with potentially with this person in this look. When that stuff gets bound to it, it's following that item around, and you would know if that was broken.
Even down to the child layer, right? So even if you have, let's say, 700 cuts inside of a final mastered video that you're putting out for air, being able to know that all of the sub elements within there were also verified. That's part of a lot of what the tracking that we're helping our users do, and that we're still formulating it ourselves. And I think that even user groups like what you guys are doing is so important, because we gain a lot of knowledge from this. And I'm excited to talk to people at NAB, as I did last year, because we learned a lot at NAB last year. There was a lot of validation to our product, but there was a lot of learning that we took out of that in focusing really on what the product needed to be in order to be successful in the future. And we'll continue to evolve like that. I think that there's no software product that would ever just stop innovating. And if they do, we probably don't hear about them anymore.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think a lot about the when you were talking about that, I hadn't really thought through that, but even just down to copyright, I think that the blockchain is a really interesting possible replacement for copyright in some cases, where it could be potentially much more nuanced. You can set the contract of what the usage of this file is, and it's not limited to the basic copyright solutions that are out there. It says, well, you can use it for this. It's a little bit like the GNU licenses that you can use. There's all these different versions of these that have been Larry Lessig put together. But I think that you could theoretically add those to the blockchain.
So we launched with Opera crypto browser about a month or two ago. And the idea behind it was we're actually integrated within the browser. So they have an Alteon NFT minting platform. It's called Launchpad, directly within the browser. So you click on it, you see us right there. And my whole thought process on that was to really get it accessible to people, so that you didn't have to go through lots of technical problems in order to mint an NFT. It's still a little bit kludgy. It hasn't been cleaned up, if you will. And my belief is 10 years ago or 15 years ago, I used to go to a drugstore or a film lab and say, here's my film reel. I'll pay you $10 to develop it, and you'll give me physical prints back. And I owned those prints. They were mine. Today, we're in a world where everyone's uploading content to social media platforms, and they don't have that ownership anymore. That digital rights has been, it's gone. And you guys were talking about EULAs earlier with some of the other companies that exist out there. And I don't think anyone has really read the full length of the description of what these social media platforms are able to do with your content and what ownership rights you have. So for me, convincing people or exposing this world of NFTs, not in the sense of I'm going to mint something and go make $1 million off of it because it's just silly, funny money at this point. But I'm minting something because it's truly mine and I want to own that. And if I want to share a picture of, me on vacation with my friends, I might mint it as an NFT, but I still own that image. It's not owned by, again, another social media platform.
Now, have we gotten to the point where gas prices have gone down to where we can mint things for our own personal?
For sure. Yeah, and I think that the Ethereum merge that happened last year really helped a lot of that.
So we're getting to a reasonable price. I think that is it all moved to proof of stake? Is that what's made the
difference? I mean, and we're down to dollars at this point. It's like $1 or $2 to mint an NFT, depending on obviously some of the other parameters. But we've seen that within our platform. But there are other blockchains that exist out there that there's no gas fees and such. But we're just supporting Ethereum at the moment for our NFT minting platform. But it is also something that we're looking at doing as part of our publisher within Alteon, is being able to mint out or publish things on blockchain down the road.
Next question.
Next question is from Douglas Carmichael, and Douglas asks, Tom Cruise is, I jumped questions. Next question is from Harshid Traviti from Daytona Beach, Florida. And Harshid asks, what type of accessibility could be found in your product as far as for those who might be using a screen reader or magnification? Could this product be for them, especially for those who might record with various tools and to get something correct?
Well, first of all, hi from Florida, my home state. But I think that we're actually working with somebody at Apple right now who focuses specifically on people with disabilities and making sure that we're focusing on anything for either hearing impaired or slightly visually impaired. So there's a lot of elements into the product that we're trying to bake in over the next couple months that really help out with people with disabilities. So for sure, keep tuned on that one. I would say that you'll see some updates coming out in the next couple months with regard to that. When we add speech to text later on this year for natural language processing, that'll also help out with being able to see a lot of the, almost a closed caption, if you will, that's being generated. That will also help out some of the editing process there, I would say.
Next question.
Next question is from Douglas Carmichael, and he said, Tom Cruise is shooting part of the latest Mission Impossible aboard the U.S. Navy aircraft carrier. How would your product handle workflows in environments where intermittent or poor internet connections?
Really hard. I think that it's only as good as your internet connection. We had one user a month ago that was really not having a good experience, and we finally asked them to do a speed test on their internet. And they're like, well, we have an ISDN line, and it was like, kilobytes upload and download. So look, it's not for everyone. And I think that if you really look at the majority of people right now that are working at home, over the last 2 years, they've been able to upgrade their internet. We're seeing a lot of aspects, whether it's Starlink. So we have a documentary that's shooting right now, and they have a Starlink set up at their base camp. So they're using that for uploads, and it's working out well for them. Again, it's you're only as good as your last mile, right? And if the internet connection is going out constantly, nothing right now that we can do, no sorcery or magic that we've got baked in that can help without proper connectivity.
You know, I don't know if you saw the story recently, but there was a guy who got stuck in the snow in his car and he was worried about safety. And he texted his location on his phone, and then he attached his phone to a drone and flew it up until it connected to a cell tower. That sent the message, and he and another car that had gotten stuck got out of it by virtue of that brilliant piece of thinking. Is there ever a potential that we might have a store and forward kind of process where if you don't have a good connection right now, that your device will hold on to your files until it gets a better connection and then connect and upload?
Yeah, that's largely a lot of what our accelerator does. So the accelerator has that logic built into it. And again, it also has Aspera built into it. So it'll just keep trying and trying and trying until you basically tell it, stop trying.
Perfect. Alex, next question.
Next question is from Alex 4D Golner in London. And Alex asks, I suggest you add the ability to apply arbitrary Apple Motion 5 template to transcodes. We could then add any kind of overlays we want and process the video in ways that we want. Would that be possible?
I was with the compressor team on Monday.
Very good. Okay. Noted. All right. Next question is from Roscoe Jones in Madison, Indiana. And Roscoe asks, you were recently the keynote speaker in Long Beach for student broadcasters. What was their response to Alteon.io? And what was the best question they asked?
The best part about it was I was getting asked questions by students that were 13, 14, 15 years old that rival any guys on this panel right now. And that to me was so cool. I mean, it was so cool because it really did bring me back to my roots of when I was in high school. I was that kid that would go into a news station and start looking at everything and asking the technical director, what does this do? What does this do? What does this do? Or I remember being as nerdy as twice a year, B&H would come out with their catalog. And this was pre-internet, keep in mind. And I would flip every page, and Marker Tech was another one that I always looked forward to. And I remember being 15, 16 years old, and it was like Christmas morning when the B&H catalog came in the mail, and I could flip through and see everything was there. It was an incredible experience talking to them. Obviously, I spoke as the keynote on the first night, so I didn't really have that one-on-one interaction. But what was great about it is I was able to stay for another 2 days at the conference and really connect. So whether it was walking through the halls and people would stop me and say that my stories sort of resonated with them, but then they would ask me some questions. That was great because I loved being able to be accessible to them and show them, sort of what they're capable of. And I think lastly on this whole notion of things, these are the future storytellers. And I'm not saying that lightly. I mean, these are going to be the people that we're going to be watching their news broadcasts or their content down the road. And I think that it was important to instill on them something that was instilled on me very early, which is integrity. And what you're producing has a huge weight to it. And, you can't lose, people's trust in you. So you always have to retain that. And that was something that I was always cognizant of when I was reporting for NBC Network. But also I think that they have such skewed viewpoints on a lot of things that are going on in the world, just based on either fake news or being able to produce content just because it generates a lot of views, right? But because of that, they also have a huge responsibility. And that was one of the biggest things that I really tried to express to them while I was there, is that this responsibility is something to be taken seriously.
Nice. Next question.
Next question is from Ben Varna in Rosemont, Illinois. And Ben asks, would it be possible to integrate a Brightcove account with 10,000 videos? And would it be possible without using the Alteon storage?
What was the first part of that question? It broke up.
To integrate would it be possible to integrate a Brightcove account with over 10,000 videos, and would it be possible without using the Alteon storage?
No.
There you go. Next question is from Courtney Gooden in Hollywood. And Courtney asks, when transcoding to Proxies, can it sync double system BWF audio ISO files to video using timecode and maintain the metadata through post?
Currently, we don't have that available. So we largely have been working on making sure that the video just works. So if you have video there, we do have a concept. It's privately for us right now that we've been testing on relinking clips, and it also goes with a lot of other things that we have with potential camera to cloud workflows using like a tear deck, let's say. And Alex, you and I were both talking to John the other day about this. But again, thinking about relinking or attaching other elements to this item structure that we have, certainly on our radar.
And it should be getting easier and easier inside NLEs to do sync clips or something equivalent where you're doing that marriage before you upload into the cloud.
Yeah, but I would also argue if your audio person is uploading separately from the video that exists out there, to be able to create that joint in the cloud, that's something that we're certainly really working closely on. But again, I think that we're going to succeed as the production world continues to adopt us, but believe in us, right? It takes a village, genuinely. You only see products succeed over time because people really believed in them from the beginning. They wanted to see them work. They wanted to see them advance. We can't advance without people coming into Alteon, signing up, bearing with some of our bumps and bruises that we might have a little bit along the way, but no software company has been perfect. And, we're really trying our hardest as a small team, again, not being sort of funded by a major institution or enterprise. We are very lean on how we're approaching things, but also it's very purposeful mindset of what's very important today for the majority of people that are out there in the majority of workflows.
We have one more question.
Next question is from Mickey Makachor in the Philippines. And Mickey asks, I am able to saturate my gigabit connection with frame.io. Would I be able to do the same with Alteon? Where is Alteon hosted?
100%. Well, when we expand out globally in terms of our servers everywhere around the world, I think that'll only get faster. But I would say that right now you should have no problems. We've have people in India that work for us, and even from India, they're accessing our servers in Dallas from IBM on a minute-by-minute basis, and they're testing everything that we have, and it's very good performance for them.
Nice. Matt, this has been a fabulous chat. Thank you very much for coming in and letting us know what is going on with Alteon. We hope that you have continued success, and I'm looking forward to learning more and more about your product as you go. Do you have any last words, anything you'd like to leave us with before we finish up today?
No, please, stop by our booth at NAB, pull me aside, grab me if you're there. I love to make time for anyone that I can. Obviously, it's kind of craziness that's going to be going on, but more importantly, try it out. There's free trials, and everyone can log in, and it's unlimited time for that free trial. Your user account is always your user account. So if you go from one place to another, or you're accessing multiple groups, you always get to retain your own personal user account, and that could be free for life if you play us right, if you will. But we have various storage tiers, so online, nearline, archive. So if you have a large archive, please, by all means, we have people that are using us right now because they're able to have the full UI structure of Alteon in an archive process. So I think that's also something really important to point out. But I can't thank you all enough for what you're doing for the community, because I listened to the show, and Bill, you've said a lot of really great things about us in the past as well. And I really can't say enough appreciation for what you guys are doing, not only for Alteon, but also for the rest of the community.
Well, it takes a village. I agree with you 100%. And you are an exciting part of the growth of this village. And so we look forward to seeing what you're developing. I look forward to you at NAB and in the future. Our next show, don't forget, Saturday, the class reunion. We've been here for 3 years. So definitely tune in tomorrow if you want to look back at some of where we've come from. And don't forget, NAB is coming up. It's going to be a big deal. Our office hours teams will be doing hours of live coverage from the show floor, as well as producing YouTube shorts and doing all sorts of crazy things that we've never tried before. That's part of what we are. We're a test bed for technology to see how we can leverage this whole Zoom thing we do every day. We'll be on the floor at NAB from April 16th through the 19th in some form or another. Show up here for the show in the morning and we'll tell you exactly what's going on every day. Last but certainly not least is our tremendous thank yous. Everybody who is involved in the show. We want to say a profound thanks to our panelist experts who come here every day to help people, our producers, you, the viewers who drive the show content with your questions and your votes on the questions. That's critical to how we do it. And the amazing behind-the-scenes crew. It's a global operation, and we have a tremendous number of people who are coming together every single day to make office hours possible. So watch the credits. They're about to start right now. Thank you for watching Office Hours, and we'll see you all tomorrow.
And a quick reminder that Justine Ezerick will be on Gray Matter today. I, Justine, will be on Gray Matter today. The links are out there. You want to ask the questions early. Justine is going to tweet a link to the Gray Matter show. So there's a couple million people that may.
Can you servers handle it?
Chris tells me 500,000 is the most he can do. We're hoping we stay.
So just keep saying Alteon, 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 Alteon over and over.
That's exactly.
Hey guys, thanks so much.
Matt, thank you very much. Great job. We appreciate you being here.
Thank you, Matt.
Thanks, Matt.
Take care, all.